Welcome to Coming to Know Yourself, your inner self. In this episode, the conversation is about how no one is going to heaven because heaven is not a place. It is a state of consciousness, a state of heart, mind, and soul. And the reason also is because we are not physical beings and there is no physical place to go to. When this life is over, you will not go anywhere. You will always remain where you've always been. It's just that the surroundings will change. And to understand why heaven is not a place, first we need to understand what we truly are. We are not human beings. This human body is a biomechanical machine, an avatar, a vessel to gather experience and to gather wisdom and to learn and evolve as spiritual beings. But as a spiritual being, we don't have a body. We are pure energy and pure light. And the light is consciousness and the energy is awareness. And our being exists each in their own separate dimension. And that dimension is called mind. And each one of our minds is a direct, complete copy of the entire physical universe. But it's not a physical universe, it's a spiritual universe. But if you could see yourself, you would look like the entire universe. When you look up to the stars and you look into the universe and you see galaxies and suns, you're actually seeing a reflection of your actual self. And the mind is a separate dimension. It's a spiritual universe. In the Bible, they call that spiritual universe the kingdom. And when they refer to the kingdom of heaven, they are referring to the mind in a state of consciousness known as heaven. Heaven is a state where your heart is not divided. It doesn't have a void of yearning, struggling. There is no want in your heart. There's nothing that you desire to personally make you feel okay, an emotional need to make you feel complete. It is a heart that is completely whole, completely holy, completely empty of all of that want and desire and struggle and suffering. It is a heart that is not broken. It is a heart that is completely emotionally well and totally content within yourself. Heaven is a state of mind with a mind that is completely empty and silent of all compulsive thinking, worry, anxiety, yearning for the past, avoidance of the future. It's a mind that is completely centered in the moment, in the now, completely present in the moment. And it is a mind that has no darkness, no regret, no sorrow, no remorse, nothing to look back on and wish you could change, nothing that you want in the future. It is a mind that is still and completely empty. And heaven is a soul that is complete, completely evolved into the oneness of self, where you have come to completely make peace with yourself. And that alone feeling that you have when you're all by yourself no longer is something that you run from. That alone feeling is now an all-one feeling, both heart and mind, where you are completely content with your own being. You need nothing from anyone, nothing from anything. Your environment doesn't have to be a certain way to be completely content with just being. And your main experience of life is not out there striving to get or constant experiences and doing. Your attention and focus is now inward. Your main focus and experience is on your own being, your awareness, your feeling of your real spiritual energy, your signature vibration. And when you're in this state of heaven, your true feeling of yourself is experienced as a state of total bliss, total peace. It's that sameness. You know, when we're all by ourselves and we say, I know I'm by myself because I feel alone. When the mind and the heart are one, and the heart is empty and the mind is still, then an alone feeling becomes inner peace, because it's the only thing you experience. And that alone feeling is no longer a feeling we run from or feel like it's separate from us. It turns into the all-one feeling. And we're whole, we're holy, we're filled with full consciousness, which is being filled with the light. Kind of like when it says in the Bible, when thine eye be single, then thy whole body will be full of light. When your consciousness and your heart and your mind are all one, a singular vision, a singular outlook of oneness, connected to everything, no emotional struggle, no want, completely unconditional in your love, when your heart has only love in it, and it's completely unconditional for everyone and for yourself, where you have no condition of want and struggle and yearning, then your mind can be filled with the light, and your body can be filled with the light. Your body being your soul, and the self that you call the I. And so heaven is not a place to go to. You're already there in that dimension called mind. You use your mind every day. It's your spiritual kingdom. And everything that you see is your own light, creating patterns to see these physical things. The physical body is not even in your presence. It's a digital, somewhat copy created by your own light, and the four senses are subtle variations of input being sent to us into our dimension from the brainwave signal. The brainwave is a wireless signal, and it sends it to us into our own dimension, that signal, that sensory signal, and the four senses of taste, touch, hearing, and the sense of smell are just subtle variations of energy changes in your awareness. Awareness is feeling. Feeling is knowing, and knowing is experience. Experience of change, and comparing one change from what you've known before to what you know now from that experience. And consciousness is just the act of seeing, not what you see, but just the act of seeing. And what we see and experience are expressions of consciousness. The entire physical universe is a metaphysical model of the mind. And everything existing in the physical universe is an expression of consciousness. So that's why we're not going to go to heaven, because we are already in the place that we long to go to. It's just that we're not experiencing that place the way we want to. We want to experience that heaven, that peace, that bliss. It's the place doesn't make heaven. It's the people that make heaven. So if we want to be in a place of perfect love, unconditional love, total peace, no fear, no anxiety, and with only people that we can trust and feel safe around, we must become one of those people. That's one of the reasons why we're here, is to learn to love ourselves unconditionally, to love others unconditionally, to become one inside, to end that emotional struggle, to be completely emotional well without addiction and emotional crutches and the need for emotional stimulation and the constant drive of want. We're here to learn to control our emotions, our mind, our desires, our wants, to maintain that emotional well-being, that spiritual well-being. When Jesus says Thus it be so for us to fulfill all righteousness. What he's saying is for us to fulfill all right choices, righteousness, right choices. And so we're supposed to learn how to make right choices for our spiritual well-being. The reason why we're not experiencing heaven right now is because we've made wrong choices. That's what, when they talk about sin, sin in the root language just means living in ignorance or failing to hit the mark, not making right choices. To spiritually be well, to spiritually be whole, to maintain that way of life. So we're always experiencing peace, love, and a heavenly state. That's why Jesus said, I am the way. Because the way, he's teaching the way to become that state of consciousness. In the beginning, we had that experience. God made us in his image. And that image is not like a physical body or it's something you can look in a mirror or a reflection of, an identity of some shape or form. That image that he made us in his likeness is a state of consciousness and a state of heart and mind and soul, which allows us to see through the lens of our Father in heaven, to experience his likeness, the way he sees life, to experience that state of consciousness of heaven, to experience the bliss, to see life the way we were meant to see it, totally emotionally well, absent of want, with a heart that is whole, a mind that is empty, with a total emotional stillness, and a soul that is filled with light, a light heart. And so that is the truth that Jesus was trying to teach us when he says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. The truth he's talking about is to learn to walk the path, the way to that truth. The truth being the image that God made us in, to return to that state of consciousness and that wholeness in our hearts. Just like Jesus said, if you do not humble yourself like this little child, you will not see the kingdom of heaven. Because seeing heaven is a state of consciousness. And if he says, if you're not born of water and of spirit, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Because entering is to enter a state of consciousness, to enter the state of the mind of a heavenly consciousness. Because the kingdom is the mind, it's a spiritual dimension. And each one of us has our own spiritual universe. And to be born of water is to cleanse your entire being and fill it full of light again. Imagine you have a dirty cup full of dirt or ink, and you fill it full of pure water. And the more you fill it full of water, it overflows. And eventually that cup is clean. And just like when Jesus says, first clean the inside of the cup, then everything else will be taken care of. The cup is our hearts. And so the water that we must fill that cup with to clean it out is love, unconditional love. It is the wine that Jesus talked about, turning the water into wine. And so spiritually, when you clean the inside of the cup and you fill it full of love, you're turning that water into the wine, the fruits of the vine that God has given us through the truth that Jesus is teaching us on how to walk the way, the narrow path of the way, to come back to ourselves, to come to know that truth, that divine truth of who we really are and that image that God made us in. And to be born of spirit is to have a completely new heart. Once you cleanse the heart, be born of water, and fill it full of love, then you have a new spirit. Just like Jesus said, you shall know them by their fruits. Good fruit, a good tree produces good fruit. And so the tree he's talking about is a tree of knowledge. And Jesus, his words are that tree of knowledge. He's trying to teach us to adopt that tree, that wisdom, so that our wisdom is his wisdom is our wisdom, and we produce the same fruits. And to be in his likeness, to walk the way, to follow Jesus, to be reborn in that Christ image, which is the image that God made us in. So in this video, I just want to talk about how heaven is not a place to go to. And simply having faith in Jesus is not going to get us there. It's great, yes. The first step was for him to say, hey, yes, you've been living in ignorance, you failed to hit the mark, you've fallen from that state of consciousness, you've fallen from that grace of perfect love and experiencing that heavenly state. You've lost being in that connection with God, in that image that he created you in. And he basically gave us a new beginning. He said, you are forgiven of your sins. You're forgiven of your mistakes, of living in ignorance, failing to hit that mark. That's the beginning. That he says, take up your cross and follow me. The cross is a metaphor. He physically lived out the cross to show us, like little children, a physical example. We learn as children by example. And so binding his hands on the cross is us binding our hands spiritually to no longer live the way we're living. Our hands represent action. And so it's a change of life, living through the way Jesus teaches, and to act and be through that way, that narrow path, and to discard our old life as a human and begin learning how to live as a spiritual being. When he bound his feet, nailed his feet to the cross, we are nailing our feet to the cross when we take up our cross. Because with his feet bound together, we're now walking the narrow path. And we're no longer walking through life with our agenda, our human agenda. We are walking the path of Christ, the way, the narrow path of the way, so that we can get back to that truth, to reinstate that state of consciousness, to experience that image that God made us in again. And the thorns on Jesus' head is a representation of our suffering, the thorns in our minds, that struggle, that suffering, the regret, the sorrow, the emotional struggle, our trauma of our past. That's the tribulation. That's the things that we need to overcome, the inner work that we need to do to cleanse our hearts, to be born of water again, to turn our hearts from water to wine, to take Jesus' sacrament, which is his teachings, and the thirst after his teachings, and drink of his wisdom. And the bread of life is the stirring and the leavening of taking those teachings into our being, and the oven being our hearts and our minds, and baking that bread into something that we can feed our souls. Taking that knowledge and feeding our souls with something that can develop into our own wisdom by living the way Jesus teaches us. And he teaches us how to cleanse all that trauma and all that darkness in us in the narrow path of the way. The way is the path of love, unconditional love. He teaches us constantly about choose love, turn the other cheek, forget about your enemy, love your brother. He's trying to get us to cleanse our minds of the negative and fill it for the light through the positive. Because the image that God made us in is the positive polarity. And the human image that we've created throughout our lifetime is the negative polarity. It's the suffering. And so that's what we nail up on the cross, is our human identity. We give it up and we begin a spiritual journey on the path of the way. And we carry that cross. And the cross that we carry is to have faith in love. God is love. And when, like in John 1, when we abide in love, God abides in us, and we abide in God. And so does the Christ, so does Jesus. And so love is our cross. No matter how much suffering, the whole reason why we carry that cross is to always set down the ego. As long as we are bound by love and living as it is our cross, the ego is set down. The ego is part of that human identity. It is nailed to the cross. It is bound. We're no longer walking in the human way of life with the human agenda and the human wants. And our actions are nailed to the cross. And our hands are now bound to fulfilling all righteousness, fulfilling all right choices. Whatever the moment says is the right thing to do, we listen to our conscience, we listen to the Spirit, and for the sake of coming back to that heavenly state of consciousness. Heaven is not something that's just handed to you because you had faith in Jesus. The faith in Jesus is, he was trying to get people to believe that he has become a son of God and that he has the way home to our hearts where the image God made us in, to believe him, to follow him, to listen to his teachings, to take them and make them our own. When he said, I liken you to a wise man if you take these sayings and do them. And if you do not do these sayings, I liken you to a fool whose house will be destroyed. He also says, if you're just going to live by my name and do works in my name, at the end of your life, Jesus will say, I never knew you. Depart from me, those who do iniquity, because you never nailed your human life upon the cross. You never followed me. I never knew you. You never walked in my way, in my path. He said, in that same breath, he said, those who I never knew, only those who do the will of my Father shall enter the kingdom of heaven. Not just those who have faith in my name. Because Jesus was trying to not only say, hey, you have forgiveness. That's the beginning. Now follow me. Follow the narrow path of the way. Come to know that truth and rebirth yourself of water, clean your heart, and of spirit, fill it full of love. Become a spiritual being of love. And then you'll know the truth again, that image that God made us in. And so today, this video is about how heaven is not a place that anyone's going to go to. And if we think that having faith in the label on the bottle and never drinking its contents and living in the way and cleansing our hearts and our minds and nailing our human identity and our egos on that cross and carrying our love and abiding in love like Jesus said we should, if we think that we're going to just go to heaven because of that, just because we had faith, it's not the case, because heaven's not a place. It's a state of consciousness. We separate ourselves from God because each spiritual dimension of mind, of the spiritual universe, is experienced through telepathy. We connect our minds, our spiritual universe, to God's mind, which is his spiritual universe. And as they merge, we see the same consciousness. So now we can experience the same plane of existence. And sure, you can create all kinds of things in the mind, a paradise for places to exist. But unless you can make your mind and your heart one in that state of consciousness of heaven, there's no way to get there. We alone are the ones that are responsible to getting our hearts and our minds into that oneness. Jesus did the hard part. He created an entire physical example to give us a spiritual understanding of what we're supposed to do spiritually. He sacrificed his life to show us, like children, and a living example. And his words now are a living testament, a living word to show us the way back to that truth, which is our image that God made us in, so that we can have that eternal life. Eternal life is a life that doesn't change, a state of consciousness and a state of heart that never changes. And it doesn't change because it has no want, no struggle, no suffering in it. It's a constant state of bliss, a oneness. And so to walk that path it's not a path that you walk and you find the end and you're like, I'm done, I'm in heaven. The way is an eternal path. The way is the eternal life. Just like in the Tao, it says, the Tao is one that one can always tread, and that which is not the Tao is one that not one that one can always tread. because the Tao represents the way and always represents eternal. And the way is unconditional love. And it's us being that unconditional love, the oneness. And so we must create that state of consciousness ourselves by following Jesus, listening to his words, and coming back to that truth and following the way. And there'll be more on that in other videos, but right now this is just about how heaven is not a place that we will go. It is a state of consciousness to change what we see now, the way we look at life, and so that we can open our eyes, awaken, be fully awakened. And I speak from personal experience. I am a fully awakened spiritual being. I am existing outside of this human experience. I am that in that state of perfect bliss, perfect peace, that state of heavenly consciousness. No suffering. I'm looking through the eyes of this body, but I'm awake in my spiritual dimension of the kingdom, the spiritual kingdom. And I'm here trying to show people how to see that there's a message that is incomplete in Jesus' way, the truth, and the life. Everyone's in the beginning of the path, in the forgiveness stage, but it's time to walk that path and come home. And we'll talk more about the way, the truth, and the life in other videos. For now, this is just about how heaven is not a place that we go to. Until then, my sympathies for your suffering, and I think about you every day. And together, we will unveil the hidden mysteries, as Jesus would call it, of his teachings. He hid them in parables so that the wise and prudent would not see them, and babes would understand them. Those who are the most humble. And as he said, I reveal my mysteries to those who are worthy, and those who do not see, but they see, and those who hear, but do not hear, for them I give parables. And so in these videos, I will show you the veil lifted, and you will see the mysteries of the path, so you can see the way more clearly. Until then, thank you very much for watching this video. If you got to the end, I appreciate it very much. Blessings to you.